Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of MGR Unplugged. Today, I'm here with David Gill again, and we're going to talk about the NBA draft. Actually, we're not going to talk about the NBA draft. We're actually going to talk, as much as David would like to.
Hey, I can talk all day about the NBA draft if you want me to.
I just wanted to make sure you're awake. No. We're actually going to discuss a few more updates. We had an episode about Shopify and Facebook and integration and e-commerce and all that. And since then, there's a few more updates that we wanted to add. We had a few, some feedback from our listeners suggesting that we expand a little more on some of the sections. So we're going to do just that today. But before that, I wanted to remind you, if you haven't listened to the last episode that I recorded it last week. I think it was actually last Friday with Anthony Amin. This guy is an inspirational, amazing guy. He's a veteran of the Afghanistan war, and his story was just so compelling. I don't want to spoil it for you. You haven't listened to it. It's the last podcast. I think it went live on Monday. And if you go to MGR Unplugged, whichever podcast network you use, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything, you will find it right there. Give it a listen. It's a very, very inspirational story. And in fact, I'm going to be working with him on many more projects, including his own personal brand and so forth. So please give it a listen. It's really, really worth it. But without
it was good. It was pretty intense when I listened to it.
Did you? Yeah, I was almost... I was in front of him when he was explaining to me all his story, basically. And it was, you've seen that in movies and all that stuff. This is the true story of a person going to war and suffering firsthand pain. And that's incredible. So, give it a listen. It's a very good story. And the person, he himself is amazing. He's a great friend. And you'll hear more from him. I want him to come back and discuss with me or talk with me about other business things and things that he does. But it'll be in a few weeks or maybe in a few months. But it was a great podcast. All right, so without further delay, let's get over to the topic of the day, which is actually, like I said, e-commerce and Shopify and so forth. So, David, a few things that I wanted to expand. First of all, you actually told me before we were preparing for this podcast that Shopify just came with this new feature that is similar to Amazon FBA or something like that. I don't know exactly the details. I don't think you know them either, but...
so basically Shopify, they had their Shopify Unite conference. Just like all these companies have their big conferences, theirs was on Wednesday, I think, or maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. But anyways, they made some major announcement, but the biggest was their new SFN, Shopify Fulfillment Network. And basically anybody who is familiar with Amazon FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon, it's going to be very similar, but for Shopify. But basically it's just as it sounds. It's a fulfillment network. So Shopify, what I believe is that they're investing, they said, $1 billion into opening many warehouses. And I believe they're going to work with other logistics companies as well. I'm not 100% sure on all the details on that part. But really the main thing is that now they're going to help Shopify sellers offer 2-day shipping nationwide, which is a big deal because obviously one of the biggest barriers for e-commerce sites is actually the shipping. I mean, a lot of people, even myself, as much as we work with e-commerce companies ourselves, I still will go a lot of times if I find something on Amazon, which, I have a Prime account, so I get the free 2-day shipping or 1-day shipping sometimes. I'll buy it over buying it on an e-commerce store. So now Shopify very well knows that, and they're trying to close that gap. And it's very difficult for an individual seller or a small business to offer great shipping.
Right.
But Shopify is basically trying to close that gap for their Their
it
sellers.
looks like I think the consumer now, before it was Amazon, they started with the free 2-day shipping for Prime members, and then obviously Walmart matched it, and they came with
Target
the same
now has done the same
Target now is doing the same thing. So really, if you go to any of the major either e-retailers or big box retailers with their online presence, they all deliver definitely in 2 days, sometimes next day, sometimes even same day, as Amazon is trying to do now. So that puts the small business online e-commerce disadvantage, because if they are basically fulfilling their orders themselves, they find themselves like, okay, somebody orders something on a Thursday or a Friday.
Yeah, they just don't have the scale to compete.
Right.
Obviously, Amazon has a massive network of fulfillment centers across the country working, I don't know if it's 24/7, but they work many hours of the day and they process millions of orders. Obviously, a small business does not have that scale. Shopify is now bringing that scale to them. So
let me ask you now, from the strategy standpoint, do you think that will make some of the smaller businesses that normally say, hey, I have to be on Amazon just to be able to provide my products and services next day and so forth, or in the next couple of days, do you think some of them will kind of think twice now and say, okay, well, if Shopify offers me this FBA type program or FBS or whatever, should I just maybe just do my own marketing, and I don't need to be on Amazon to be able to deliver in the next 2 days?
I think no, because the main reason to be on Amazon isn't necessarily for the FBA. That's a big thing that they offer, but the biggest reason to be on Amazon is because half of all e-commerce in the US is done on Amazon. Mm-hmm. So the biggest reason is because they have a massive customer base. They have 100 million Prime subscribers.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have a huge marketplace where you have a lot of competitors.
Right, but if you're there, you're getting more exposure, and it just gives you another sales channel. What I think this really does for Shopify is, as far as all of their e-commerce competitors, besides Amazon, every other platform that offers, whether it's BigCommerce or Webflow or just even WordPress, just any of these platforms that offer e-commerce services too, now they are really separating themselves from the competition, because now for $30 a month plus whatever their fulfillment fees are, you get a full fulfillment network with 2-day shipping. No other platform can offer that. So that definitely, I think, with acquiring more customers, separates them for sure.
So yeah, I think
as the dominant platform.
Yeah, I think that's going to make Shopify separate itself from the other competitors, from the WooCommerce, BigCommerce, and all these other e-commerce software platforms that people are considering when they set up their own online store. And
not to mention, if you really, look down the road a few years, which is obviously what Shopify is doing, and I've seen other people, I was on Twitter when they announced this, and I was kind of reading a lot of reactions, and a lot of people made good points, which is, Shopify charges $30 a month for their basic service, and then obviously there's tons of upgrades, and there's Shopify Plus, all of that, which is in the thousands, but the majority of people spend maybe $30 to $60 a month with Shopify. The fulfillment revenue they could get could far, far, far surpass that, because if they're charging, say, $4 or $5 a unit fulfillment, I have no idea. They haven't announced anything. It's as far as pricing goes, it's going to be based, I'm assuming, very similar to Amazon, shipping weight, all of that. But if they're making, say, $5 a unit, $4 a unit fulfillment fees, that's going to way surpass the amount of revenue they're getting from someone's $60 a month that they're paying Shopify. So really, this fulfillment network could be their biggest source of revenue a few years down the road, much more so than the platform itself. And maybe I could even see them offering the platform at a lower price, because that's not their moneymaker, and just to get people into the fulfillment network.
Yeah, just to give them the competitive edge.
So that's their strategy, and we'll see what they do. They're taking early applications now for merchants who I think meet certain sales criteria.
Do you know any about the sales criteria? Do you have a certain volume or anything?
No, I don't know.
I'm assuming it's only
details.
in the US for now, right?
It's only US, but they said it'll be ready by the end of the year, which is pretty quick.
That's pretty quickly, yeah.
Obviously, we're already in June, almost July. So within the next few months, I'm sure we'll see it roll out. So very exciting for a lot of e-commerce sellers. And I think it's a great option, a great alternative to other fulfillment options.
That's great. Yeah, Shopify is like in the news every day for different reasons. But one of the things they do very well, which is what attracted me to the platform in the first place, is their pretty seamless integration with Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads, and so forth. You can enable your different sales channels through the admin section of Shopify, and if you have a Facebook business account, or which obviously is the same as Instagram, or you have Google Ads in place, or any other kind of marketing campaign, or whether you're going in the paid advertising space, Shopify makes it pretty easy actually to connect your accounts with them, and then I mean, depending on your skill level, you can actually design and produce the ads within the Shopify marketing platform as opposed to go into Facebook Business Manager and things like that.
If you're entry level and you're just trying to get started, you could do that. But I would definitely, if you're someone doing volume and trying to scale, the ads manager is going to be much better. There's just so many more
You're
options.
talking the Facebook Ads Manager.
Yeah. Doing it within Facebook. I have not seen really a third party, because a lot of these companies come with third party ads manager like mini versions.
Integrations, yeah.
Yeah, but I have not seen one that really comes close to the scope that you.
Well,
scope
and
of
I
features.
think that part of the reason is because the Facebooks and Googles and so forth,
They're not going to let you.
Right. They
have all
give
those
you
features.
a certain percentage of access to their platform, so that people start there and then hopefully they like it, and then once they
Right.
become more experienced, they just say, "Well, I'm going to do this actually from Facebook."
If you've
Manager.
never made a Facebook ad before, it's fine. But if you're a company spending
Right.
thousands of dollars, I definitely would not do it through Shopify. I would do it on Facebook directly.
Right, but you can still connect. What you do through Shopify is when you set up your store and your products and everything, you set up your catalogs, and then you can connect them to your accounts with Facebook, social media, Google, and so forth, and then have your catalogs basically with all your products and pricing, so people can shop for those and buy them from these different, what they call marketing channels, obviously. So that's something that Shopify has that they've done very well, and honestly, I've done it a few times for some of our clients, and it's pretty seamless. Actually, it's not as long as you have access, obviously, with all the security in place for access to the Facebook business accounts and Instagram and all that. You should be able to connect the accounts in a fairly effective way, without much complications. And obviously there's an approval process like there is for everything, but it shouldn't be too complicated. So. Any other updates that you have from the Shopify arena or Facebook or anything?
No, that was the main one. I need to do some. I didn't follow it live or anything. That's gonna be my weekend reading, is to see everything that Shopify announced this weekend and kind of catch up on all that. But I just saw the major headlines, and that was a big announcement. So I definitely was interested in that one.
Yeah, it's actually, speaking of announcements, there are so many announcements these days for all these platforms that it's almost difficult for people that do this 24/7 like we do to even stay updated with,
Right, Amazon's
with
the
everything.
same thing.
Yeah.
They're always coming with new things. That's why, actually, to plug real quick, we have our Amazon weekly newsletter, because
That's right,
we
that's
found
right.
it difficult for ourselves to constantly keep up with everything. And we were constantly having our clients ask us things. Oh, what's this? I heard this new feature. What's that? So we created a weekly newsletter that goes out every Monday. So if you want to subscribe to that, you can go to mgredge.com/join. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. And basically, once a week, Monday, takes a few minutes to read, just gives you all the
I
big
know.
news
I
from
actually
Amazon
use
every
that
week.
myself. I even though you and I have meetings a couple of times during the week, I don't have time to keep up with everything, and I actually use the your newsletter to just keep up with some of the updates from Amazon.
Honestly,
which is
because I help curate the newsletter, it helps me, because obviously in having to go through and
Research.
read all the news, I learn too. So it keeps me on my toes, keeps me on top of it. So anyways, just if you're an Amazon seller, I think it'd help you
That's
out.
good.
If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe.
All right, so one of the things that I wanted to cover during this particular podcast is a little more advanced advertising techniques, again, combining the Shopify and Facebook advertising. So and this is more as far as advanced audience retargeting, basically. So, there's different strategies when it comes to creating typical campaigns. And if you start from the beginning, let's say awareness is where you just put ads out there, and it's a little bit of a shotgun approach where you just put an ad that is very generic and you try to select your audiences based on the product that you sell and trying to reach as many people as you can. But obviously the result of those is usually not very effective, because it's what we call the top of the funnel. Basically, you're trying to reach as many people as you can, but
Right. Obviously, you have different layers to ads.
Right.
You always have your top of funnel, middle funnel, and then bottom of funnel,
And
then obviously retargeting.
Right, and one of the, I wouldn't say mistakes, but one of the wrong decisions that some of the clients that we talk to make is that when they first launch their Shopify store or any type of online, e-commerce store, they say, oh, I need to advertise, and we talk to them about advertising and everything, and they want to basically just make the store and everything available to everybody, and they put this budget, whatever it is, whether it's from $100 a day to $1,000 a day to $2,000 a day, or whatever budget they have, and they say, I want to advertise this to all these people and all these age groups and all these things, and really, that's the wrong approach. You are trying to get as many people as you want, as you can, but it's not really your target. And if you've had some kind of success in the past with any audience or any buyers for your products, the best thing to start is to actually start with a retargeting approach, where you target again people that you have, and is this famous dilemma between how much it takes or it costs to actually acquire a new customer versus retaining an existing customer. So when it comes to e-commerce and advertising, it's actually better to start targeting your existing customers that you've worked with for the last few years, even if they haven't been very active, and try to start with them, build and expand the list through affinity audiences and so forth, and then combine that with a little bit of acquiring, top of the funnel approach. So I personally prefer to start a campaign with a little more retargeting before I actually go to a wide audience. What is your opinion with this in your experience?
The ultimate thing that determines the audiences you target is your scale and budget, basically. I mean, if you're someone who needs to spend $5,000 a day, yeah, you're going to have to target larger audiences because obviously you need to spend that budget. If you're on a much lower budget, if you're only spending $100 a day or something of that nature, then you can get very targeted. And obviously, this is where you want to look a lot at the ROAS, the return on ad spend, because at a lower ad spend, it's much easier to get a high ROAS because you can just target people who are incredibly likely to buy your products. Obviously, as you scale your ad spend, you're going to get lower returns, but that's okay. Obviously, when you have a low ad spend, a lot of people will get 10x ROAS on Facebook. That's unrealistic if you're spending, more than $1,000 a day. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not something that you could expect. So who you target really depends, and as far as the retargeting goes, we can get into the real details, but there's, I mentioned before, there's a lot of layers to this. It's kind of it's hard to discuss in one podcast.
This is what I wanted to get into.
There's two aspects there's really three aspects of who you're targeting. The first is, like we talked about, basically new people. And so that's when you start with top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. What do I mean by that? Top of funnel is basically, this is the first, maybe second time they're really hearing about you. They've maybe seen a couple lives, but they've never really interacted with you. Middle of funnel is they've clicked on one of your ads, or maybe you had a video on Facebook and they actually watched the video, and you can retarget them with people who have watched a certain amount of seconds of the video, 10 seconds plus, whatever, you can decide that. And then bottom of funnel is maybe they went to your page and maybe they even added something to cart, but they didn't actually purchase. They're very close.
I'm talking about,
exactly. And so there's different levels, and obviously you need all of them. You need top of the funnel to get people to the bottom, and then there's the depending on your product. If you have something that is a consumable product. Or something that people need to buy on a recurring basis, then obviously you want to be retargeting existing customers as well. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. But yeah, you have your classic top of funnel, then you have top of funnel, middle of the funnel, and then you have your retargeting, and then you have the retargeting of existing customers. That's kind of the three main aspects of it. And
right.
You can get even much more detailed from there.
Right. But my point is that when you get people that are already at a level where they're familiar with your brand and your store, you know that the percentage of people that actually go to your page and even browse to the store, and they actually end up buying or actually checking out and making the purchase, is actually very small, because people don't buy usually things the first time unless they're a repeated customer that they just know the product they want and so forth. So
it's very it's very product dependent too. If you're selling something for $15, maybe people will buy it the first time. If you're selling something for $200, yeah, that's something that's going to take people a few interactions with you,
right,
to purchase.
So if you were to spend whatever budget you have, I think I mean, it's worked better for us. So for me, when I do some of the campaigns, to spend the money trying to basically retarget, which is basically convincing those customers that have already been to my pages that this is a good product. So rather than say, okay, now I'm going to target brand new customers that I need to have to start the educational process from the beginning. So when you want to double your sales, like obviously this is like a long-term goal, but if you want to just double, triple your sales, the best way to do it right away is by retargeting your customers that are basically have come to your website. That's how you retarget them. You have already cookies, pixels, and so forth to target them, and then you present to them ads that are relevant to them. And then obviously we have retargeting based on browsing experience, product experience, abandoned cart experience, and so forth.
You can do, obviously, you can create certain landing pages for a certain offer, and then people visit the landing page but don't buy. Then you can retarget them with that. Maybe you were offering 10% off, now you offer 15% off.
Exactly. You have special loyalty campaigns for customers
that have
already been there.
There's a ton of things you can do, and then you obviously can get into, a lot of times you can maybe have a page where you're just capturing people's emails, and then you retarget them through email marketing too, in addition to Facebook marketing. There's so many things you can do. Obviously, there's I'll give one shout out to a software that I'm a fan of. No affiliation, not a sponsor, but one is called Klaviyo. They're very good at, I mean, it's just a software, so obviously they're not doing things for you, but it's a great system that you can use and that we use with our clients to basically do a lot of things we're talking about. Abandoned carts, set up email marketing for people who have visited your site. That's one system that I like. But there's a ton of these different systems, and if you're not utilizing them, you're just missing out. That's it at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But obviously, there's no system that's just going to do it for you. It's going to take a lot of work. Obviously, you can hire an agency too, which is what we do, what our clients do with us, but you can do this yourself too. But it really is a full-time job, especially depending on the scale of your store. I mean, if you're someone who's spending, like we were discussing, $500 a day, $1,000 a day, or more on Facebook ads, it's really a full-time job to make sure you're utilizing all these strategies we're talking about.
And the thing is that before, you remember not too far ago, when we started doing all these digital marketing campaigns on the start, you started doing retargeting, which is basically saying, hey, I'm going to retarget people that come to my website, I capture the information, whether it's via browser cookies, this or that, and then I'll retarget them with an ad. Now the retargeting has become so specialized and so sharp as far as accuracy that you can actually retarget people that go to a particular product, they at what stage of the purchasing process they quit, and so forth. You can have dynamic product ads, which we haven't even started yet, but the DPAs that we use the acronym for, those are super, super hyper effective. I mean, this is basically a dynamic ad that you start with based exclusively on the product that you've been looking at, whether it's whatever you go to a shopping cart and you start browsing around, and then you end up looking at a certain type of product or page, and then you kind of go there and you're about to buy, but you don't buy it, and then you can create these ads that are dynamic depending on your own experience visiting the website and your purchasing process, that you can actually serve that ad to the person, and it varies from person to person. So,
right, and that works especially well when you're looking at, say, a clothing company that sells men's and women's clothes. You don't want to advertise to a man your women's clothing line. Mm-hmm. So that's a great example. And basically, businesses that sell a lot of product variations, the dynamic product ads work phenomenally well for.
Yeah, let's get to those for a second. Obviously you do those for our clients as well, and we've done, different, and this is not just for Shopify, by the way. I mean, we also do campaigns that are digital marketing campaigns for major hotels, resorts, and pretty much everybody in all industries. And the principles are the same. It's not just whether you sell a physical product or you're selling tickets or you're selling rooms. I mean, it's really retargeting a person with the product or service that they're actually looking for. So those dynamic product ads or service ads, for that matter, work very well, because you can have an ad that is almost like a fill-in-the-blank space, a generic ad. Then you have certain areas of the ad that are dynamic, and that's where the name comes from. So you can serve the body of the ad for that particular audience, and you can have an ad that says, okay, this guy is a male that came from here, this age group, and look at this product. So that ad automatically pulls information from your ad database and then serves the ad to this person. So this person will connect to the ad directly, because it's basically revisiting a product that they've already expressed or seen before, and they have interest. The same computer, the same person can go, and then there's a female that is looking at something different, and then that ad will serve that female, something completely different. So that's what the dynamic part of the ad is. It's no one size fits all. It's actually many sizes for each individual viewer.
And this gets into the challenge of constantly coming with new creative for your ads. This is really, I think, the biggest challenge facing advertisers, marketers today is creating enough volume of creative for your ads. Because before it was, you make, back in the old days, you make your one commercial and that's your big spot, and then you run it for a couple months.
Well, you can think about print advertising. Ads. You have a print ad for a magazine, and then if the magazine had 100,000 circulation or whatever, you put a 2-page spread on a Time magazine. That ad had to be the same for any kind of income level, sex, orientation, this, that. I mean, basically everybody that saw the ad was going to see the same ad. So you had to make it so generic that it really didn't appeal to anybody.
Right.
Now that's completely changed.
And there's two parts of the creative. One is making sure you don't get ad fatigue, which is basically, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, where maybe some company has retargeted you or something, and you keep seeing the same ad over and over and over. Typically, from not just our experience, but studies that have looked at this, you don't want to show the same ad to someone. It's basically frequency. Facebook tells you the average frequency. You don't want to show, it's somewhere in the 4 to 7 range is about the max. 4 to 7 times seeing the ad. Once it's more than a 7, you start getting ad fatigue, and the person completely, even if they see the ad, they will just scroll past it without even thinking.
Yeah, it doesn't register anymore.
Or it'll start bothering them that they start seeing this ad all the time. So 4 to 7 is kind of that sweet spot. And so that's one part, making sure you don't have ad fatigue, which happens a lot with retargeting, because obviously you're constantly retargeting people. You're going to basically show them these ads all the time, and so you have to make sure you're constantly updating those retargeting ads so you get the ad fatigue. But the second part is, like you said, because before you were targeting general, and this was true for even early online advertising, you kind of target more general audiences, but now you can target very specific people, and it kind of is a no-brainer. But if you want to target an audience that is women ages 25 to 35, it probably is a good idea to put a woman age 25 to 35 in that ad, which is just going to convert higher. And it's the same with all types of demographics, things like that. And that's just one basic level of it. But like that, you can expand 100x, and you can target people. If I'm a big NBA fan, so if you have some ad that's integrated with basketball in some way, that might work better than me if it's just a general ad. So that's the biggest challenge I see, and we face it all the time. It's constantly coming with new creative. Before, it was always trying to figure out the best ad placements, and now it's the opposite. You have unlimited options for ad placements. The creative is the hard part.
Yeah, and also it becomes a little bit of a information or option saturation. I mean, now the average advertiser that, like I remember when Google used to have these little coupons or something, they still have them, that they say, oh, for just $100, just start your campaign and target, for the small business and all that stuff. And really, I don't even know why Google does that, because they know very well that those $100 you spend in creating an ad or something, they're going to go nowhere.
It's fine for them because they know some small businesses, free $100. But yeah, obviously $100 gets you nowhere on Google. But
you get nothing. And secondly, that you give it to a small business owner that, no offense, but basically it's not their business to know about advertising, which back in the days is like you put your ad within a certain number of characters on the headline and all that stuff, and it was fine. Now there's so many parameters behind the scenes that you can do for your ad to even be relevant in the auction insights and everything, that really, I mean, it's free, so it's fine. But if I were spending $100 like that, it'll be like throwing a $100 bill in the air and then just hoping that it lands somewhere. It's just not going to happen. It's just too complicated.
Let me ask you, because you brought this up, and this is a dilemma that a lot of companies face, especially as they start to grow their marketing. Is this something that people can do themselves in-house, or should they hire an agency? Because obviously we're an agency, so I don't want to be biased. But my opinion, I'll give mine, and I'll see what you have to say. But I think, yes, you can do it in-house, but I think that it's becoming it really has become a full-time job. Even us, the amount of time we spend on accounts has increased a lot. And just like all of the different strategies we've discussed, those take a long time to set up. It's not something easy to do.
I honestly,
it takes a lot to just stay on top of everything, all the new things that are constantly coming out. And I think you can do it in-house, but I think only to a certain level, because I think the nice thing you get with an agency is that's all they do.
I think the way the technology is going is making it more and more difficult for companies. I'm not talking small businesses most of the time. Small, medium businesses do it in-house. Because the level of specialization you have, the level of technicality that you're having now with the advertising is so complex. Even for agencies like us, which we do this 24/7, all we do. I don't need to sell hotel rooms. I don't need to sell widgets. I don't need to do anything.
I don't need
and
to
then
talk
on top
to
of
the
that,
manufacturer.
do marketing. Exactly. I don't need to do all that stuff. I'm just basically doing advertising, research, and implementation 24/7. And as we said in the beginning with the Shopify and the Amazons, all that stuff, it's even challenging for us to keep up with all the new technology out there. So if you want to do it right, I'm talking from good to great, which is the difference. You have to have somebody that is an expert. Now, for us as an agency, and I think it's for other agencies too, because we talk to other colleagues as well, is actually the best situation is when you have a marketing director at a company that is at the same level, and they basically help you planning the work so we can work the plan for them. So that's the perfect synergy when you have a person in-house that is actually very knowledgeable. And it's like the chef that says, hey, we have this new product. We want to market it this way and that way. And they understand the technology. They understand the features and everything. They just don't have the time to do it themselves.
Right.
And then they hire an agency that is their partner. Really, we're partners when we work on this together. We're just on different sides of the fence, so to speak. But we work together and we help them with the plan. And then we review the results every time. We change directions as we need to. We provide recommendations, but unless you're a huge company that has a whole marketing department, and then you're basically doing it in-house, even though it's actually another agency.
Will outsource it
right.
as well.
For the small to medium business vendor that has to do everything else, and then on top of that, just go to log in on Facebook and find out that the ad, and that's what happens. What happens is that most of the people get disappointed because they do it themselves, and they don't have the results that they expect, and then say, oh, this doesn't work for me. And that's the problem. It actually works. It's proven that it works. Facebook is not making all this money because it doesn't work.
To go off of that point, I think one thing that I've definitely noticed over the past probably year, maybe 2 years, but probably definitely the last 18 months or so. Before, Facebook ads were so cheap that you kind of could get away with not really knowing what you were doing and just doing basic stuff, and you would still make money. Now it's getting to the point where basically everybody who's anybody is running Facebook ads. It's and Instagram and everything. It's much more competitive. And so now the small business who was running it in house or medium-sized business that said we can do it ourselves with our 1 or 2 person marketing team, they were able to get away with it before, and they weren't implementing all the strategies we talked about and many others. But it didn't matter because the Facebook ads were so cheap and so effective that they were able to get away with it and still get a good return. Now I don't think that's the case. I think if you don't really know what you're doing and have a great strategy and really know how to execute, you're not going to get the return, or at least you're going to get much lower returns than you could be getting.
And the results are not going to be there. And it's not different than, in any aspect of life. I don't know. Like, for example, I'm not a golfer, but, you ask any golfer, he says, yeah, can you play golf? Oh, yeah, I can play golf. And you play with your weekend, with your friends, or whatever handicap you have. If you even have a handicap, you score like 100 in a par 72, whatever. Now, that's fine. You have fun. You know golf. You can play golf. You know the rules, all the stuff. You do it, and you're basically an average or below average golfer. Now, you put that same golfer with the pros, and it's like they are not even close. It's just when you get to the pro level, it's a whole different world out there. And it applies to every sport or every aspect of life, whatever. So advertising and marketing is becoming highly specialized right now. And if you just want to say, I'm spending this money and I'm getting this traffic and all that stuff is fine, but what people never see because it's not visible is that the biggest cost is actually the money they are not making.
Right.
It's not so much people say, oh yeah, well, I spent $1,000 on, I got $2,000 worth of revenue and this and that. That's fine. Okay, you're happy with that. Continue doing what you're doing, but you need to realize that for this same $1,000, a person that actually knows what he's doing would actually make like 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000. And that money that you don't see because you are not making it is what is costing your business. And then your competitor may be doing what you're not doing. And then little by little, they're going to take the business away from you.
And I think even more so, the real skill comes when you start trying to scale your marketing. Because maybe when you're spending, if you start out, you've never run Facebook ads and you just want to test it, you say, all right, let's just spend $1,000 a month, see what happens. You can make a return on $1,000 a month. If you do it in-house, maybe you might be fine. But now when you say, okay, let's go and start spending $500 a day or $1,000 a day, and really trying to scale it so that you are able to grow your business with your marketing. When you start getting to those levels, it becomes much more difficult. It's like, it's no different. Most people can probably juggle 2 things at once. Now you throw 7 things, there's not that many people that are going to be able to juggle 7 things at once. And so it's the same with marketing. It's if you want to be able to scale your marketing, you really need to know what you're doing. You really need someone with know-how. And most small, medium, it's not their fault. They're not advertising experts. They're not marketing people. They're trying to run their business. And so that's when I think when you're ready to start scaling your marketing and saying, listen, we want to put real money into this and really grow, that's when you should bring someone in, because it's just going to be very, very difficult to run a $500 a day plus budget when you're trying to manage everything else in your business.
Right. And you end up doing the typical set it and forget it, where you place the ads and then you never check them, and then you say, oh, well, we didn't do well this month, or we did better this month. And it's just basically you're waiting on luck more than skill, and that's really not how you run your campaigns. And that's the difference between when you see other companies that actually make it. Some companies get it, and some other companies don't get it, or they don't get that they don't get it, and
right.
and it just becomes a little hard to convince them that advertising is not an expense, it's an investment. And it's like everything else. All investments sometimes will go well, and sometimes they don't do so well. Sometimes they go bad. But in the long run, you don't need to look at your investment with like a day-to-day results or return. You need to look at the investment with a longer span. And some companies, as you know very well from the startup business, they expect to be losing money for the first 5 years. So it'll be ludicrous for them to just basically say, "Oh, we started the business yesterday, and in the first month, where is our P&L and all that stuff?" It's just not how it works. Investors know they're going to be on the hook for a while before they start making money. All the companies that go public, sometimes go public without even making money yet, and most of them that's the case. So, but you need to have a longer perspective and say, okay, well, we're running in the right direction. We're going to stick to our guns. We're going to have that plan, and then yes, we're going to have a short-term maneuverability so we can move fast, but a long-term perspective so we can actually have a long-term goal, and we're going to stick to the goal and just go there, And
that's when you start getting into brand as well. Obviously most small businesses, medium-sized businesses, they don't have a brand. They have a brand, but nobody knows who that brand is. And so obviously spending marketing dollars when no one knows who you are is going to be less effective than when you have a big brand. But building that brand takes years. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. And it's really, obviously, brand is not just marketing. It's obviously your product, your service, whatever, how good you are, your customer service, everything ties into brand. But when you first start marketing, or in your first 2 years of marketing, you don't have a brand yet. You'll start building it up slowly within your community maybe, but it takes a long time to build a brand. And it also, like I said, it's a mix. Maybe you have great marketing, but then if your product sucks or you have bad customer service, it's going to kill your brand. So that gets into more brand thing. But yes, it's a long-term, it's like everything. You can't expect to get rich quick. It takes a long time to build anything good, anything worthwhile.
All right. So one quick question before we wrap it up. So when it comes to the other question we get all the time is, how quickly should we change directions when you see something that is not working as you expected? So typically you set up some ads, whatever it is, Facebook, Google, whatever platform you're using, and you kind of, you're curious, you look at them every day. if not many times a day, saying, "Oh, I got these impressions and these clicks and the click-through rate and this and that," and then a lot of people get very impatient. I mean, and they expect immediate results, and then before the ad is actually building an audience or the algorithm is actually learning, which actually most of the platforms now they tell you, hey, Facebook is still learning now. It's still learning where is the best audience, because Facebook also wants to serve the ad to the proper people. So they need to learn when they serve it to a certain audience, if people click on it, they either review it or not. If not, that's not the proper audience and so forth. So if you have an ad that you use, you basically launch a campaign, and then in 2 days you decide, okay, well, this is not working, I'm going to switch it, and then I'll do this. You're basically not allowing the ad to do the job. I mean, minimum time, I think, in my eyes, my experience, usually 5 to 7 days is the minimum time to start seeing if that ad is actually responding.
It depends a lot on budget. If you have a high budget, you can find out pretty quickly. But it really depends what you're testing too. Because if you're testing, a lot of times if I'm testing creative, I'll do, like, say I'm testing new images for some ads. And, Facebook will let you do 6 at a time per ad. And so say I'm doing like 2 of them and I have 12 new images that I'm testing out. Well, I'll let it run until I have a decent sample size. And when I say a decent sample size, again, obviously it depends a lot on budget. Some people spend $500 a week. Some people spend $500 a day. If you're spending $500 a day, you're going to find out a lot faster. But you have to know your sample size. If, say, once you get, maybe 10,000 impressions or more, you can kind of start getting a gauge on whether a ad is working or not. And so what I'll do is, if I have 12 new images that I'm testing out, and you want to test obviously one variable at a time. So you keep all the copy and everything the same, just the image is different. Then I'll go and I'll say, okay, I start with 12. After maybe a day, I'll drop it to 6. Whatever the 6 were the least performing, I'll cut those off. And then typically I'll go down to, until I see, a lot of times you'll get to the 3 or 4 that are best, and then they perform about the same. And I say, okay, these 4 images work really well for this audience. So now I have my note of that, and now I can spend more money on these images. And you do the same thing with copy, the same thing with call to actions, the same thing with landing pages. Maybe your ad is really good, but your landing page sucks and doesn't get any conversions. Or maybe your landing page is great, you just can't get anybody to go there through your ads. Especially, Facebook and Instagram is just constant testing, checking, trying new things. Right, exactly. There's different, they just came with their new...
You're basically day trading with the ads. You're basically just buying and selling.
They've been rolling out the new, what's called Campaign Budget Optimizer. Optimizer, I think is what it's called. CBO is basically what it is. And so before, you used to always set the budgets at the ad set level, which is where you set the audiences and all of that. Now Facebook has their own, basically, algorithms that they use, machine learning, AI, whatever you want to call it, so that you set the budget at the campaign level. And then you set up your audiences. So if you have 4 different audiences in this campaign, then the Facebook will start running. And basically their algorithm will start learning, and then it will decide for you how much to spend on each audience. And basically Facebook is saying, without saying it, our algorithm is smarter than you.
Yeah.
But with that, I have seen myself, and I've heard from many, many others, that it takes at least a week, if not more. Because in the beginning, what you'll see a lot of times is it's actually going to be more expensive. But then after 1 or 2 weeks, it will be less expensive. So now you don't always want to use that. I still do budget at the ad set level a lot, but depending, especially if it's a longer term campaign, one that I'm not going to be constantly messing with, I will just do a campaign budget optimizer, because in the end, normally Facebook's algorithm is actually very good at basically optimizing your budget, and better than you, because obviously has access to much more data.
And that actually explains what you said just a few minutes ago about back to the Shopify, Facebook, Instagram, Google integration. That is one of the reasons why it's better to basically create your campaigns and everything at the platform that is the developer of the campaign, like the Facebook, Instagram, Google, and so forth, versus using Shopify. All of these things that we just mentioned, you could not do directly through Shopify. Shopify makes it easy for the beginner that just has a product. You're selling clothing, you're selling products, whatever it is. You go to the marketing tab and your admin, and then you say, okay, create a new ad and create a new campaign, connect with Facebook, and it's going to give you the basic features to create an ad.
Like I said, if you've never made an ad before, if you're brand new, you just started your
you
e-commerce
upload
store,
an image or
it's
copy.
Fine. But if you're looking to run a real campaign, you have to do it on Facebook.
Right. So, okay, well, this has been good. I think I like to do this, maybe even once a month or so. There are so many news happening in the e-commerce arena, and it's evolving so fast. I think there's a need to kind of consolidate all the thoughts and everything. And we'll do this. I mean, like David said, you can follow up. You can sign up to the Amazon specific newsletter. You are a big Amazon follower, retailer, seller, vendor. For everything else, you can go also to either our main agency website, which is mgragency.com, or if you are interested in joining either of the podcasts, the one that David has or this one. This one is MGRUnplugged.com, and you can see all of them there. You can subscribe also on your favorite podcast platform, whether Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and so forth. And then David has his own podcast that is a little more tech-driven than this one. This one is a little bit all over the place as far as topics, but David has one that is more tech specific, and is basically the Edge podcast. And speaking of, what is your topic for this week?
I was going to talk a bit about Shopify as well, and then just some of the other tech news that's been going on this week.
Okay, very good. All right, well, that's it for today. For everybody else, we'll add this. This probably will go live in the next couple of days, and then we'll add show notes and everything. Usually I add the podcast to our MGR blog for people that follow the blog, and then we also obviously add it to our website and the MGR Edge website, so you will probably find it if you follow us, and then we'll have show notes on the whole podcast and everything else, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.
Bye.